Got another story for y'all today. Hope you enjoy it. I've had scary moments before. Weird encounters on late night buses, shady people hanging around corners. Times when I thought something might actually go wrong, but nothing has ever compared to what happened the other day with me and my friends. I don't even know if writing this out will really capture how terrifying it felt in the moment, but I'll try. It started out as just another dumb adventure. There's this forest near where I live. It's not the sort of place where you go for walks or picnics. It has a reputation. Everyone in the area has heard stories about it. People say dodgy things go on there, that gangs from the nearby estate sometimes use it as a spot for deals, and the weird noises that come out at night. If you grew up there, you just kind of know. The forest isn't somewhere you wander without a reason. Of course, that made it more tempting. Me and my group of mates had been hanging out near the football pitch, bored out of our minds, when someone suggested that we go check it out. At first it was a joke, but then we all started hyping each other up. What's the worst that could happen? We go in, prove to ourselves that there was nothing scary about it, and laugh about being idiots for ever believing the rumors? So we set off. The air was heavy that day, muggy in the way that makes your clothes stick to your skin. As we got closer to the forest, I noticed how quickly the atmosphere shifted. The estate behind us was loud, kids shouting, cars rumbling past, the constant hum of life. But the closer we got to the tree line, the quieter it became. Almost too quiet, like the forest swallowed sound. We hadn't even stepped inside properly when it happened. A sharp crack rang out through the trees. We froze. For a split second, we thought it was just a branch snapping, but then it came again. Another loud crack, this time sharper, unmistakable. It sounded like a gunshot. I looked at my friends. Their faces mirrored mine. Wide eyes, pale, unsure whether to laugh it off or bolt. But nobody laughed. Another bang echoed through the air, and that was enough. Without even saying anything, we all turned and sprinted back the way we'd come. The adrenaline hit instantly. My heart was hammering so hard that it hurt, and all I could think was, what if someone's shooting? What if we're in the line of fire? We didn't stop until we were completely clear of the trees. Only when we collapsed on the grass, gasping for air, did we look at each other and start trying to explain it away. Had to be fireworks, one mate said, though he didn't sound convinced. Could have been someone chopping wood, another offered weakly. But we all knew what we'd heard. For a while, we sat there, half joking, half shaken, convincing ourselves we'd been stupid. The human brain is great at downplaying fear once you're safe. Eventually, someone suggested that we go back, that maybe we just worked ourselves up over nothing. I can't explain why we agreed. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was boredom. But against all common sense, we decided to head back towards the forest. Looking back now, that was the moment everything started spiraling. The second approach felt different from the start. None of us were laughing this time. The trees loomed taller, the shadows darker, every sound in the distance sharper. Even the air seemed heavier, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting. That's when we noticed the car. It was white, sitting there like it had just appeared. At first we thought it was parked by coincidence, but then we realized it was actually moving slowly, almost deliberately. The windows were tinted black, impossible to see through, and something about it set off alarms in my head. We tried to play it cool, kept walking like nothing was wrong. But then we heard it, the distinct sound of a car door opening and slamming shut. We all turned our heads just slightly, not enough to make it obvious, but enough to catch the movement. A tall figure stepped out for a moment before getting back in. A few seconds later, it happened again. Door opening, door closing, like they were checking something. That's when it clicked. The car wasn't just passing through. It was watching us. My stomach dropped. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but none of us wanted to be the first one to say it out loud. Then one of my friends muttered under his breath, "Boys, it's following us." He was right. Every time we moved, the car seemed to adjust its position, keeping just enough distance to not be obvious, but close enough that we couldn't mistake it anymore. The tinted windows made it worse. We could only see vague outlines of people inside, but there were definitely more than one. We hadn't even made it into the forest yet. We were still on the edge, the shadows stretching long across the ground when the reality of the situation hit me. This wasn't just paranoia. Someone in that car was interested in us, and not in a good way. That's when the real fear set in. We froze for a moment, just staring at the white car. The sun was dipping lower, casting long shadows over the edge of the forest, but the tinted windows made it impossible to see inside. All we could make out were dark outlines, shapes shifting slightly, like predators sizing us up. Every hair on my arms stood up on end. I'd never felt fear like this before. Not that gut level, something is going to happen and there's nothing we can do kind of fear. Then it moved again, slowly, deliberately following the line of the trees as we backed up. The car door opened and closed once more. A sharp metallic clang in the silence. And that's when we noticed him. A man stepped out. He was tall, like ridiculously tall. Muscular, broad-shouldered, built like someone who could lift a car if he wanted to. But the thing that made my stomach twist was how completely covered he was. All black clothing, gloves, hood, face fully concealed, nothing but darkness. And in each hand, weapons. 2 long, jagged blades that look like zombie knives, the kind you see in horror movies or survival games. I swear, even from where we were, he moved with intent, and every step he took screamed danger. We froze. The outlines in the car hadn't moved yet, but we knew there were others inside, just waiting, silent and menacing. I didn't know how many there were. 3, 4, 5? I could only make out shapes behind the tinted glass, enough to know we weren't alone. Panic hit like a tidal wave. One of my friends, Jay, the one with torn ligaments in his leg, tried to step back too quickly and tripped over a root. He hit the ground hard, letting out a sharp cry. We were all frozen for a second, torn between helping him and running for our lives. I'll never forget that moment. Fear clawed at my throat, but instinct kicked in. We couldn't leave him. Not like this. We grabbed him, half dragging, half supporting him as we moved. Every step was agony for him. Every second felt like we were walking into the jaws of danger. Behind us, the car doors opened and closed again. I could hear the thud of boots hitting the ground. They were moving. I don't know how to explain what it felt like. Pure adrenaline, pure terror. My brain was screaming at me to run, but my body was frozen with fear. The man in black took deliberate steps towards us, zombie knives catching the fading light, glinting in a way that made my vision narrow with panic. Every second I could feel the weight of the others in the car watching us, waiting. We tried to keep moving, Jay hobbling as best as he could with our help. Every sound in the forest felt amplified, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the whisper of movement behind us. My friend's breathing was ragged, loud, and panicked. One of them turned pale and pressed a hand to his mouth. He was on the verge of throwing up. The fear was that real. Then the man made a step forward, raising his knives slightly, as if testing the air. That was the moment I truly thought we weren't getting out. This is it. This is how it ends. We didn't stop thinking after that. We couldn't. Every move was survival. Our only thought was get out. Get out. Get out. We staggered toward the edge of the forest, backing away from the trees, trying to put as much distance as possible between us and that man. The white car stayed nearby, shadowing us, its tinted window hiding everything but the outlines of movement. Every glance we dared to throw revealed more shapes inside. People watching, waiting. The gang presence in the estate suddenly made sense. This wasn't random. They knew the area. They controlled the space, and we were tiny, exposed, completely visible to them. It took everything we had to move Jay along. At one point he stumbled again and I thought we were going to lose him entirely. My arms burned from carrying half of his weight. My legs ached, my lungs burned, and my heart felt like it might explode. But the fear, pure unrelenting fear, pushed us forward. At some point, one of my friends finally whispered, "We need to get somewhere. Anywhere that people are." We managed to spot a shop just at the edge of the estate, lights spilling out onto the street, windows bright, workers moving behind the counter. It was like a beacon of safety in a nightmare. But getting there wasn't simple. The man in black had moved closer, the car inching forward, doors opening and closing again. The sounds echoed in my ears, each one a hammer striking my skull. We bolted, Jay stumbling, nearly falling again, us supporting him, barely making it across the empty street. One of my friends gagged, nearly throwing up from the panic and the smell of sweat, fear, and adrenaline. I thought we wouldn't make it. Thought we'd never reach the shop alive. Finally, we crashed through the doors. The workers looked up in shock, their faces registering immediate concern. We were panting, shaking, unable to even speak at first. One of the men behind the counter moved quickly, asking if we were okay, guiding us to sit down, checking Jay's leg. The relief was instantaneous, a release so heavy it made me shiver uncontrollably. Behind the tinted glass of the shop's windows, I could still see the white car in the distance. It didn't linger for long. Whether they were waiting, deciding, or just watching, I don't know. But the sheer thought of being that close to those people, the man in black, the knives, the others in the vehicle, it will haunt me forever. We stayed in that shop for a long time, trying to calm down, trying to process everything that had happened. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a raw, shaking exhaustion in its place. We debated calling the police, trying to explain what we'd seen, but the thought of them still out there, the car still moving, the man in black still somewhere in the estate. We couldn't. Not yet. Not while we were still so exposed. Eventually, after what felt like hours, we left, but we didn't linger. Every shadow seemed like it could be him, every sound a threat. We got to a safe distance before finally collapsing on a curb, trying to catch our breath and reassure ourselves that we had survived. Even now, I can't stop thinking about it. The white car, the tinted windows, the doors opening and closing, the man in black with 2 zombie knives, and the people in the car. They weren't just some randoms. They were organized, aware, and they knew the forest, the streets, the estate. We were just kids in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Jay, poor Jay, torn ligaments, barely able to walk, helped along by his friends who were just as scared as him. That moment of tripping, of seeing him fall, of fearing we might not get out, it's burned into my memory. The forest wasn't where we actually got caught. We never even made it in. But the fear we felt, the realization of what could have happened, that was real. Every car door slam, every outline in the black tinted windows, every shadow, it felt like death closing in. By the time we reached the shop, finally safe, it was like emerging from a nightmare. But the image of that man, that car, and those knives will stay with me forever. We stayed in that shop for what felt like an eternity. My chest was heaving, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. Adrenaline was still coursing through me, keeping me wired and panicked even though we were technically safe. Jay was sitting on a stool, leaning heavily on one of my friends, grimacing as he tried not to cry out in pain. His torn ligaments were making every small movement agony, and it added another layer of stress on top of the fear that was already gripping all of us. The workers behind the counter were calm, professional, trying to assess the situation without freaking us out more. They asked us to take deep breaths, drink water, and anything else we needed. I think we just sat there for a long time, staring, trying to convince ourselves we were actually okay. But we weren't okay. Not yet, because we all knew we had been so close. The white car, the man in black, the multiple people inside with outlines moving silently. We were kids. They were adults, organized, armed, and clearly not messing around. One wrong move, one stumble, and it could have ended horribly. Even while catching our breath, I could see the fear reflected in my friends' eyes. One of them was pale and sweaty, staring out the shop window as though expecting the car to come back at any second. He leaned over the counter and almost threw up right there. The mix of panic, adrenaline, and nausea was overwhelming. It was the first time any of us had ever felt that kind of terror. Not scared, terrified. Every inch of our bodies were screaming at us to get away, yet we had nowhere further to run at that moment. We debated calling the police, trying to explain everything we had seen, but the thought of the man, the knives, the others in the car, it froze us. We weren't ready to deal with the implications of bringing law enforcement into it. We were just grateful to be alive. We knew the moment that we stepped outside, we were still vulnerable. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time didn't feel real. Eventually, we mustered the courage to leave the shop. We moved cautiously, sticking close to each other, keeping to the open streets as much as possible. Every shadow, every parked car, every rustling sound in the estate's alleyway made us jump. It was like our minds were rewiring themselves to fear everything in that area. Jay was the slowest. Every step he took reminded us of how close we had come to disaster. But we supported him, rotating who held him, who helped him along. Even though we were terrified, we couldn't leave a friend behind. And the fear, the real bone-deep fear, kept us moving. Not for fun, not for adventure, but for survival. As we finally distanced ourselves from the estate, I could feel my entire body starting to shake. Adrenaline, fear, exhaustion, and relief all rolled together in a way I've never felt before. Every time I blinked, I half expected to see the white car at the end of the street, waiting. But it didn't appear. We made it back to the football pitch, the open area where we had started our afternoon adventure. Open space helped. We weren't trapped between buildings or trees anymore. But the pitch didn't feel safe either. The fear had left a residue on us that no amount of sunlight or open space could wash away. Sitting there, panting, we slowly tried to piece together what had happened. We had been inches away from disaster. The forest hadn't claimed us, but the estate, that white car, the man in black, the people inside, they definitely could have. We had stumbled into a situation far beyond our understanding or control. And the man in black, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Tall, muscular, completely covered, knives in each hand. He wasn't just some random thug. He had presence, power, authority. And the fact he had a group in the car with him, all of them watching, waiting, it made us feel like we were prey in some terrible game. Even now, weeks later, I still remember every detail. The white car, the way the tinted windows hid everything but the outlines, the sound of the doors opening and closing, the man stepping out, raising the knives, approaching deliberately, the branches snapping, the feeling of being hunted, knowing we were trapped. I also remember Jay tripping, falling, and us half dragging him to safety. That moment could have ended everything. The panic in our faces, the adrenaline, the nausea from fear. It was a perfect storm of terror. One wrong move, and the story could have ended completely differently. And the shop workers were angels. I don't know what we would have done without them. Sitting there, finally safe, catching our breath. It felt like a miracle. But the images stayed with us. The outlines in the car, the knives, the man in black, the sounds, the chase. Since then, I've replayed it over and over in my mind. I've imagined what could have happened if we had fully stepped into the forest, if Jay had fallen completely, if the car had moved faster, if the man had advanced more aggressively. It's terrifying to think how close we came to a real-life nightmare. I don't think I'll ever forget the fear, the kind that grips you from the inside out. That's the thing. Even when you're safe, even when you're on solid ground, the memory of that fear lingers. The white car, the man in black, the outlines of others inside, the snapping branches, and the sound of car doors slamming again and again. We made it out alive, yes, but the forest, the estate, that man, it will always haunt me. And I'll never, ever go near that area again. Not because of the forest itself, not because of rumors, but because of the people, the fear they inspired, the reality that we could have been so easily caught. Even now, I feel a chill writing this, knowing what could have happened, knowing the odds we survived. It's surreal. But it happened. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to understand, it's that sometimes the scariest moments aren't in horror movies or games. Sometimes it's just reality. And that day, reality was terrifying. I don't know who those people were. I don't know what they wanted or why we were in their sights. But I know this. We were lucky. Extremely lucky. And I'll carry that memory and that fear with me for the rest of my life. That was pretty good. Kind of got a little repetitive, but still pretty good. I didn't write it. If I wrote it, definitely would have been a little shorter, but still pretty good. I enjoyed it a lot. Hope you guys did too. I'm gonna fall asleep with my gun tonight, but hope you guys have a good night and enjoy.